Welcome to the When Stories podcast. I am Michelle Vandehay, one of the certified facilitators with When Stories, and I have the privilege of being here today with Lisa Quam, who is one of my most recent When Stories speakers, and get to interview her today. So, welcome, Lisa.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you on today. So, tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, so I am a stand-up comedian and I have my own stand-up production company called Quamity Productions, which actually this year I'll be in business for 4 years, which is extraordinary to me. I can't believe it's been 4 years.
Yeah, it's incredible how fast it can go, isn't it?
Is it? It is. Yes, it is.
Yeah, so tell me more about what you do with your comedy. You do stand-up comedy?
I do. Yeah. So growing up, Carol Burnett was my idol. I loved her. I wanted to be her. If people don't know who she is, she's like today's Kate McKinnon, Kristen Wiig, Tina Fey. She had her own variety show in the 60s and 70s, and she really stood up for herself. TV had promised her this contract and then they were going to take it away from her, and she said, "No way, that's bullshit. You gave me this contract. I'm going to have my show." And so they gave it to her and she was super successful. And so when I was a kid, I watched her each week and then I would act out her skits in my closet. And I just dreamed one day of being on the stage like her. And so when I turned 49, I took a stand-up comedy class, and once I got up on stage and grabbed the mic and heard the audience laugh, I was hooked because it was just magical, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And so I've been performing, and I started my own production company because I was having a hard time getting booked because a lot of shows, I'm older, I'm in my 50s, and a lot of shows it would be, for guys in their 20s, and I really wanted to have representation on my shows, so I'll generally have a person of color or a person of a different sexuality than mine. And so, I like to have different voices on my shows because I think that representation is really important, and it's important for the audience to have those different voices too.
Yeah, I love that. And plus then you just get a better variety of comedy too,
Yeah.
right? Because people are using their lived experiences.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
I love that. Awesome. So tell me a little bit about why you decided to do a When story.
Yeah, so, I one of my favorite quotes is from Maya Angelou, which is there's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. And I grew up in a house with a lot of abuse, a lot of trauma. And when I was on stage telling jokes, I was kind of doing a silly version of this trauma that I grew up in. But telling kind of these funny versions of it, it made me realize that I had a pretty significant health issue that I had actually been dealing with for most of my life. But I looked fine, I acted fine. Nobody would have ever known that there was anything wrong with me. But in fact, it took me a really long time to admit that I actually had a problem. Because, like most women, if you would have asked me, "Well, Lisa, how are you?" I would have said, "I'm fine. Everything is fine. I'm fine. Everything is fine. I'm perfect." And I think that a lot of what we portray to other people is that our lives are perfect, right? But a lot of times they're not. And I'm not saying that you have to tell your boss your deepest, darkest secret. And I say in my one story too, like, you don't have to tell everybody you crapped your pants at Woodman's this past Saturday because, I think we've all shit our pants in public, right? Like you don't have to tell somebody that. But, if you're at a networking event and it's been a crappy morning, just say to somebody, like, "Oh my gosh, it's been a rough morning," because you can help somebody else feel seen, because maybe it's been a rough morning for them too. And so I'm hoping eventually to, expand a little bit on my one story and be on some different stages than stand-up comedy and help other people, also feel seen because everybody can walk around the world just like I was, looking, perfect, dressed up every day. I had a really high profile job. I was out in the public all the time, but inside I was dying. And nobody would have ever known. Nobody would have ever known. And so part of the when story for me was I had a lot of shame with what I was going through, a lot of shame. And part of going on stage and actually, writing it down and being in, this beautiful cohort that you and Sharon created for us and being able to share it with the women in there and then being able to go on that stage that day, it was hard, right? Like it was hard,
Yes.
but there was power in it, in just kind of being able to actually I made a conscious decision that day where I took a step forward and it was like me taking a step. And that was me like dropping the shame and leaving it behind that day on that stage.
Mm,
So for me, the experience was powerful beyond belief. And there's also this wonderful community of people who've been through one stories that support each other. I've connected with several of them, and I'm talking to one of them about a podcast on Friday. Wendy Babcock is going to have me at the Milwaukee Improv for her next cohort in June. I'm going to teach a fun little improv class. I think if people are thinking about it, if they do have that untold story inside of them, I can't encourage them to sign up more because it's a really collaborative and loving space. And it's really powerful. It's really powerful and transformational to be able to say it out loud.
yeah. I got chills so many times while you were talking just about like
Oh,
you took me back to the day that you shared your story on the When Stories stage and like how you said like I made this conscious decision that I'm like stepping forward and like dropping the shame and like I
mhm.
felt that in your talk. I felt that as you like shared your story and came off stage and I feel like also like speaking to When stories in particular, I know when I did my When story, I wasn't expecting it to feel so transformational in that
Right.
way. And it really is. There
Mhm.
is something about like owning your story and owning your shame, I guess, and letting it go
Yeah.
in front of a stage and an audience of people and just like and letting it go, like how you do step off that stage as like a different person.
And I've gotten my one story premiered the end of April, and I've gotten a lot of views on it. I've gotten a lot of love from people about it. And I was nervous, a little bit nervous when it was going to premiere, just because again, it's, when I stood on the stage, there weren't that many people in the audience, but it's now live on YouTube. And again, I grew up in this house with a lot of trauma, and I always felt like I had to protect my parents, even though I don't have a relationship with them anymore. I grew up in a lot of abuse and a lot of pain and a lot of just physical and verbal abuse. And I always felt like I had to protect them. And, it's hard for me because they're able to see that, if they Googled me, they'd be able to see this now. And that it's still really hard for me to know that it's out there and I'm not protecting them anymore.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
even at the age of 54, I was always told we don't talk about what goes on inside this house, outside of this house. And so, the day that it was going to premiere, it was kind of like, well, this is I'm not protecting them anymore either. And that was a really hard realization for me after trying to not speak out loud about what went on inside of that house outside of like my husband and my therapist's office for that long of my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. And I think that's part of what makes it so powerful and like so
Right.
transformational for you as the speaker
Yeah.
as well. So yeah, I just so appreciate you sharing your story and sharing what you're sharing here. So what do you feel like is like next for you now that you have done your when story? Where do you kind of see things going for you?
I really just think that the world has opened up for me. I do a lot of visualization, and one day I'm going to be at Madison Square Garden
Mm.
speaking on that stage with my private jet. It might have too much glitter on it to take off from the runway, but I just really have big dreams for myself. And, if somebody out there would like me to, speak in front of their group or, do stand-up comedy or MC something, I really hope that they would reach out to me because I love doing that. That's where I light up. I want to help other people feel seen. I want to bring joy. But I also want to know that I want to let other people know that they're not alone in how they feel inside. And so, if I can speak my truth somewhere and help one person feel a little bit less alone, then that I think is kind of my mission in life too.
Yeah, yeah, I really do feel like you bring like joy and like lightness and laughter while also bringing like humanity and realness to the speaking and everything that you do. So I love that about you.
Yeah, thank you. I think so too. Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm as true and honest and real and loving as I can possibly be. I feel like, the When Stories too has just, it's opened my heart too. And, I've just always felt like I have this light in me to share with other people, no matter what I've been through. And so that's what I want to keep on doing.
Yeah, and you're doing a great job of it already. So
Thank you, Michelle.
awesome, Lisa. Is there anything else you want to leave us with or anything you want to like share before? So at the end of this, your when story will play, or if folks want to go to YouTube and watch the actual video, they can do that as well. But is there anything you want to share before people listen to your story?
No, I think just reach out. I'm at quamitywi.com for my website. You can email me at quamitywi@gmail.com to find more information. But yeah, I'm just open to any possibilities right now. So I hope that you enjoy the story and connect with me.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. I appreciate your time
Thank you, Michelle.
and but enjoy her when story.
Your story matters, don't let it fade. When everything changed, you were made.
Everything changed when I stepped on stage, took the mic, stood in the spotlight, told my first joke, and heard the audience roar with laughter. The audience reaction was like something I had never heard before. I was hooked. It fed me in a way that food never had. My jokes included very funny things, but also trauma and abuse from my past. You see, me stepping on stage was a border crossing, Elisa before and Elisa after. The reason that I stepped on that stage in the first place is actually pretty simple. Each year on my birthday, I give myself a word or a challenge. And the year I turned 49, it was the year of no fear. And so I found a stand-up comedy class. I signed up. And at the end, we all had to perform our own 3-minute set. Talk about terrifying, but also incredibly powerful. The laughter from the crowd was incredible and filled my soul. I couldn't get enough of it. Before then, I navigated the world in the way a lot of successful women do. I was capable, I did things perfectly, but I didn't really feel a thing. The house that I grew up in was not a very happy one. It was full of abuse, assault, and trauma. There were few safe places for me to go in that home, but one of them was my closet. Each Saturday night, I watched the Carol Burnett show. And if you don't know who she is, she's like today's Kristen Wiig, Amy Poehler, Kate McKinnon, Tina Fey. In the 60s and 70s, she had her own variety show with big characters, a cast of regulars, physical comedy. I loved her. I wanted to be her. I wish she was my mom. And the weeks in between her shows, I would go into my closet and act out the characters, costumes and all. My favorite was Mrs. Huygens, the secretary. I would put a towel in my butt, stick it out, and walk around with the nail file, if you remember who she was. I have to digress for a moment because during COVID, I was supposed to see her. I was supposed to go to a show and hear her talk about her life, but it was canceled, and I was so sad, so I wrote her my first fan letter. Just a small one, about 8 pages long. I included everything I loved about her, photos and all, including my favorite quote of hers, which is, "Once you have a dream, you've got to grab it and never let it go." About 2 weeks later in the mail, I received an autographed photo of hers with my favorite quote written on it. "Lisa, keep reaching for your dream," which I now have tattooed on my arm. So every day I get to bring a little Carol with me everywhere I go, which is incredible. And growing up, food in our house was never just food. It always had something attached to it. Love, anger, pain, terror. Mealtime was a battlefield. I never knew what minor indiscretion was going to make mom or dad blow up. It was terrifying. I never tasted a thing. But even then, I used humor to try and dispel the tension. It was awful growing up in that house. We moved around often, but each house, my closet was the same, my safe space. And in my closet, that was where I perfected my masks. Because we didn't just move across town, we moved across the country. So each new school meant a new culture, it meant new accents, it meant all new kids. And so my masks were what helped me try to fit in. But I always felt like a square peg trying to fit myself into a round hole. I didn't know why we moved. I just knew that the moving truck showed up and it was time to pack up again and leave my friends. But eventually, like everybody else, I grew up, moved out, went to school. I met, latched onto, married the most amazing man. And together we have the most incredible daughter. She has her master's degree and teaches special education. And throughout those years, we lived, we laughed, we loved, and watched our beautiful girl grow up. But I held myself together so tightly, always counting calories, trying not to let my daughter see that struggle because I didn't want her to grow up feeling the same things that I did. There was only one meal in my life that I ever remembered enjoying, a mahi-mahi sandwich in Hawaii. I can still taste it. I thought that was normal. Is that normal? In 2017, I finally made the really difficult decision to cut off myself from my family because it was just taking too much time to recover from time spent with them, and I couldn't do it anymore. But of course, I didn't need to talk to anybody about it. I didn't need therapy. I was fine. I didn't feel anything anyway. And then in 2023, I decided to start a new diet called intermittent fasting. And because I'm a perfectionist, I got really good at it. And eventually I was only eating a half a can of chicken noodle soup a day. My husband started to worry. I got a little worried too, but I was only worried because I couldn't swallow. So I went to the doctor. The doctor asked me some questions. They sent me to a nutritionist. I was like, why? I need a swallow study. I would maybe eat more if I could swallow. The nutritionist was worried. They showed me a complete plate. I said, no, I don't eat like that. Who eats like that? I need a swallow study. I can't swallow. The nutritionist sent me to an eating disorder center. I said, why? I need to swallow. What is going on? I'm fine. Everything is fine. The eating disorder center asked me some questions and wanted me to go inpatient. I said, abso-fucking-lutely not. I'm fine. But eventually I agreed to start something called IOP, which is Intensive Outpatient Program. But I had the perfect plan. I was going to go to work every morning from 7 to 10, go to treatment 4 days a week, 3 hours a day, head back to work until 5, and then go do an open mic or a show, go to bed. I would have my list, and I would fill out my worksheets perfectly correctly and get out in 3 weeks or less. Because I didn't need that shit. I was going to be done. Until 3 weeks in, when I broke. And I mean broke. I was at home. I started screaming, crying, throwing Tupperware at my husband. I couldn't control myself. I didn't know what happened. My head was in the yard. My legs were in a field. I completely fell apart. And you know where I went? Into my safe place, my closet. I texted my therapist, and thank God she called me. I don't know what would have happened if she had not. But the next morning, I got up, I took a shower, put on my makeup, and I went to work. I had appointments. Nobody would have known that anything was wrong. And then I went back to treatment, where I fell apart again, worse than the night before. The treatment coordinator brought me into her office and she said, Lisa, you are very sick. You need to stop everything. And I said, no, I can't stop. I have my list. I have appointments this afternoon. I have my binders full of lists. I have a house. I have my husband. I have my daughter. I have comedy. I can't stop. I will not stop. Who will control the universe if I don't? I was crying and screaming and saying, no, I can't. Until finally I said, you're right, I'm sick. I have to stop. I really wanted her to call my boss, but there's a stupid rule called HIPAA, and I had to do it myself. My boss was very unhappy, but that's a story for another day. And when I stopped everything, the emotions were overwhelming. The anger, the sadness, the anxiety, I didn't know what to do with them. What do you do with them? I had everything in common with the other patients in treatment. We all just wanted to be seen, heard, validated, understood, loved. And meal challenges for somebody with an eating disorder, put a piece of pizza in front of them. It's as terrifying as jumping out of an airplane without a parachute. Why did talking, yoga, art, why did it make me cry? I should have bought stocking Kleenex. I spent 14 and a half weeks there. I should have spent longer, but my insurance ran out. 2 years later, I still see my therapist, the same therapist, every week. A nutritionist twice a month, because it turns out that healing is not something I can just fill out a worksheet for. It's something I have to live through, and it's hard. I wouldn't wish an eating disorder on my worst enemy. But the thing about comedy, and my stand-up comedy, is that it's powerful.
When I do it and I stand on stage, I'm connected to the audience. It's like a magical wave. And my humor does include the hard parts. It includes the truth. And when I say the jokes, I help other people feel seen too. And when they feel seen, they're able to say me too. And they're able to let go of a little bit of their perfection too. Because good enough is good enough, right? I go outside now without makeup on. Sometimes I don't even comb my hair. I've let go of my lists. You know, on Facebook, all of our lives look perfect, right? Everybody posts how perfect their families are, their relationships. But how many pictures did it take to get that perfect one that you posted? Was it 5, 15, 54? Why not post a few of those too? Now, I'm not saying that you need to tell your boss that you crapped your pants at Woodman's last Saturday. Anyone else? Just me? Or that you've backed your car into your garage 10 times in the last 8 years. You guys, I feel so alone. You know, but maybe share a little bit of the truth about your lives. If you go to a networking event and you've had a rough morning, say to somebody, it's been a rough morning. Maybe it's been a rough morning for them too. Because when somebody steps out of hiding, somebody else feels seen too. And that helps to build connection. Comedy saved my life. And my stage time helps other people feel seen and validated. And when one person steps out of hiding, because I don't need my closet anymore, somebody else feels seen too. And that might be the most powerful punchline I'll ever tell. Thank you.
Your story matters, don't let it fade. When everything changed,